After the fall of the Soviet Union and the Cold War, many of Russia's former communist-era satellite states, like Poland, Hungary, Romania, the Czech Republic, and the Slovak Republic, became members of NATO. In total, there are currently 30 countries Russia would have to face should they find themselves at war with NATO. Is Putin terrified? What is the NATO crisis in Russia? And why is Russia afraid? You'll get all the answers here, but before we get started, please take a moment to click the thumbs up and the subscribe button to help me create more enlightening videos like this. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, was founded in 1949. It's a group of 30 countries from Europe and North America that exist to protect the people and territory of its members. This alliance is founded on the principle of collective defense, meaning that if one NATO ally is attacked, then all NATO allies are attacked. NATO has said that the alliance was part of a broader effort that has three goals: to stop Soviet expansionism, to stop the return of nationalist militarism in Europe by having a strong North American presence on the continent, and to help Europe become more politically united. Right now, there are currently 30 nations under NATO, and the last nation to join was North Macedonia in 2020. Initially, NATO started with 12 nations, but thanks to their open-door policy, which means any country in the Euro-Atlantic area is free to join NATO if it is prepared to meet the standards and obligations of membership, contributes to the security of the alliance, and shares NATO's values of democracy, reform, and the rule of law. Because of these values, NATO was drawn to the Ukraine versus Russia crisis. To the NATO alliance, Russia's claim on Ukraine is the most serious crisis to face the Western alliance since the Cold War. This came after Russia gathered more than 100,000 troops on the borders of Ukraine. Even though Ukraine is not a member of NATO, there's the possibility of deeper Russian involvement in the country as members of NATO sound the alarm and engage in diplomatic efforts. In a statement, the new United States ambassador to NATO, Julianne Smith, said that the crisis over Russia and Ukraine has been an aid to unity by bringing NATO back to basics, to the core purpose of this alliance, which was to protect us from the Soviets. Early in 2022, following an address given by President Vladimir Putin of Russia, Russia immediately began an all-out assault on Ukraine. On state television, he announced that the attack would be carried out to protect separatists in the east from genocide. Putin has never been shy about expressing his desire to reintegrate Ukraine into Russian society. A few years ago, he gave a televised address in which he referred to it as the crown jewel of Russia. More recently, he wrote an essay stating that the people of the two countries are a single unit. Following several weeks of fruitless diplomatic efforts, the decision was finally made to launch an invasion of Ukraine. The sole factor that pushed Putin over the edge was Ukraine's deepening ties to Western nations, particularly to NATO. Is Putin a madman? Anyone knows surviving an attack from all the countries allied with NATO is unlikely, but not Putin. Instead, Russia started to prepare ahead. There were a lot of reports that the Guard tank army of Russia's Western military district had been strengthened to protect the country's strategic western border. The motorized brigade was also deployed in the Novomoskovsky administrative district of Moscow. Sergei Shoigu, Russia's Minister of Defense, also told TASS.com, a Russian news agency, that the West is still the biggest threat to Russia's military security. He added that Russia will follow its plan of action for 2019 to 2025 and take several complicated steps to stop the threats. His full statement: the Separate Guards Motorized Rifle Sevastopol Red Banner Brigade, named after the 60th anniversary of the USSR, was included in the Guards Red Banner Tank Army of the Western Military District to perform tasks on ensuring the defense of the Russian Federation in the Western strategic direction. It is armed with modern weapons and military and specialized vehicles, such as T-90A tanks, BTR-82A armored carriers, BMP-3 combat vehicles, and 9A-34 Strela 10 and 2S-6M Tunguska air defense systems, the district's press service said. For the rest of the world, the concept of NATO attacking Russia may seem ridiculous. However, the Russians appear to be convinced that they have good reason to worry about an invasion from the West. After all, NATO's actions have told them as much. Let's take a quick stroll through that past. In 2014, NATO stopped working with Russia in a practical sense because of Russia's aggression toward Ukraine, stating that they do not seek confrontation but cannot ignore Russia breaking international rules, undermining their stability and security. NATO sent 4 multinational battle groups to the Baltics and Poland in 2016 in retaliation for Russia's military intervention in Ukraine. It was not until Russia illegally annexed Crimea that the Allies finally deployed troops to the region. Despite these troubles, the Allies remained willing to keep open communication channels with Moscow to manage and mitigate risks, prevent escalation, and increase transparency. President Vladimir Putin said that if NATO put troops and infrastructure in Finland and Sweden after they joined the US-led military alliance, Russia would do the same. We don't have the same problems with Sweden and Finland as we do with Ukraine. If they want to join NATO, that's fine. Putin said this on Russian state TV after meeting with local leaders in Turkmenistan, an ex-Soviet country in Central Asia. But they need to know that there was no threat before, and that if military forces and infrastructure are sent there now, we will have to respond in kind and make the same threats against the places that are making these threats against us. Putin also said that Moscow's relationship with Helsinki and Stockholm would worsen because they were both NATO members. His exact words, "Everything was fine between us, but now there might be some tensions. There definitely will be." He said, "It has to happen if we are in danger." Putin also said that the goals of what Moscow calls special military operation in Ukraine had not changed. He said that the goal was still to liberate the Donbas region in eastern Ukraine and ensure Russia's safety. Research conducted and published in 2019 by the Royal United Services Institute, RUSI, found that assuming destruction in a nuclear conflict could be avoided, British forces would be comprehensively outgunned in a conflict with Russia in Eastern Europe. This is in reference to what would take place if a war broke out between Russia and NATO. RUSI discovered that the British Army was suffering from a serious deficit of artillery and ammunition, making it difficult for them to keep up a plausible defense position if Russia launched a full-scale attack. A former head of the institute, Professor Michael Clark, also told Sky News in June 2022 that the current British and NATO rocket launcher systems were developed enough for combat, but that the Allies would still need much more to hold off Russian forces with a long-range attack. This meant that the UK wouldn't stand alone against Russia, and the US would have a great advantage over Russia in conventional forces. According to a statement made to DW by a Russian military specialist, Felgenhauer, open battle frequently comes down to far more than the stockpiles each side of the conflict can call upon. It's like predicting the results of a soccer match. Yes, basically, Brazil should beat America in soccer, but I have seen Americans beat Brazil in South Africa at the Confederations Cup, said Felgenhauer. You never know the result until the game is played. According to retired Air Vice Marshal Sean Bell, another factor to consider is that Russia is not fighting according to the international norms of war. He stated that the Kremlin would do whatever it took to win and that they would not allow themselves to be distracted by politics or the media. They're not constantly looking over their shoulders about, oh, if we hit a civilian, if we hit a building, said Bell. They just get on with it. What do you do with an enemy who would do whatever it takes to win, to cement victory? Hopefully, we'll never know. If you like this video, please click that thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel to be part of this family. Until next time.